The night it started raining like the sky had a grudge. Ryan Callahan was standing in his doorway in a worn grey t-shirt, holding a bowl of cereal he hadn't eaten, staring at the woman collapsed against the wall in his hallway. She hadn't knocked. That was the thing. He'd opened his door to grab the package he'd seen the delivery alert for, and there she was, sitting on the hallway floor, back against the wall beside his door, knees pulled to her chest, soaking wet, eyes closed. Not unconscious, just done. The way people look when they've been strong for so long that their body simply stops cooperating without asking permission. He stood there for a full 4 seconds. "Hey," he said. Her eyes opened. They were brown, dark and deep, and for a moment they were completely unguarded, the eyes of someone who had no performance left in them. Then awareness came back and she straightened slightly, and the guard tried to reassemble and only half succeeded. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I live in 4C. I needed a second." "I'll go." She moved to stand. Her ankle gave. She caught the wall. Ryan set down his cereal bowl. "You're not going anywhere on that," he said. "Come inside." I have a 6-year-old daughter asleep down the hall. A deadbolt. And cereal for dinner," he said. "You're not in danger. Come inside." She looked at him for a moment, calculating, the way people who've learned to be careful calculate. Then she looked at her ankle, then back at him. She came inside. Her name was Mara Chen. He learned this in the first 5 minutes, along with the following. She was a trauma nurse at St. Augustine's. She'd just finished a 14-hour shift that had included 2 pediatric codes, and one that didn't make it. She'd been walking from the elevator to her apartment, when her legs had simply stopped, and the ankle was twisted, not broken probably, from where she'd caught herself on the stairwell, railing on the way up. Because the elevator was out again, he made her tea without asking if she wanted it. He found a Ziploc bag, filled it with ice, wrapped it in a dish towel, and handed it to her while she sat on his couch. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know," he said. He sat in the armchair across from her. "You want to talk about the shift, or you want to not talk about the shift?" She looked at him. "Not talk about it." "Okay." He turned on the television, low volume. Some home renovation show. They sat in companionable silence for 20 minutes, which Ryan thought was either completely normal or completely strange, and he couldn't tell which. "How long have you been in 4C?" he asked eventually. 7 months, she said. "You?" 4 years. She absorbed this. "We've never met." "You keep unusual hours," he said. "I keep kid hours. There's not a lot of overlap." She almost smiled. "What's her name?" "Sophie." He nodded toward the hallway. "She will absolutely come out here if she hears a voice she doesn't recognize. By the way, she has the hearing of a bat and the curiosity of a journalist." Mara did smile then, just briefly, and it changed her whole face, something younger and less guarded coming through. Then she looked down at the ice pack on her ankle, and the smile faded. "I lost a patient today," she said. To the ice pack, not to him. 4 years old. Ryan didn't say anything. He knew what it was to have grief that was too raw for words to touch. "I'm sorry," he said, simple, direct, not trying to fix it. She looked up at him, and something in her expression shifted, like she'd expected something different. Platitudes, advice, the reflexive discomfort people had with grief that couldn't be resolved. Instead, he'd just sat with it, the way you sit with someone in the dark. "Thank you," she said quietly. At 11 o'clock he showed her the guest room, which was technically a storage room with a pull-out bed, but it had clean sheets and a working lamp, and he'd cleared a path through the boxes with brisk efficiency while she waited in the doorway. "You don't have to," she started again. "Your ankle's the size of a grapefruit," he said, "and your apartment is 3 doors down. You can go home in the morning. The sheets are clean." She looked at the bed. She looked at him. "Why are you being this kind?" she asked. Not suspicious. Genuinely asking, like kindness was a thing that required explanation. Ryan leaned against the doorframe and thought about it honestly. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said. "February. After that, people brought us food and sat with us and did things that didn't need doing, just so Sophie and I wouldn't be alone. I've been trying to pay it back ever since." He shrugged. You looked like you needed a place to land. Mara looked at him for a long moment with those dark, unguarded eyes. I'm sorry about your wife, she said. I'm sorry about your patient, he said. They held each other's gaze for a moment in the quiet hallway. Two people carrying different griefs, recognizing something in each other. Good night, Ryan, she said. Good night, Mara. At 6:47 in the morning, Ryan was in the kitchen making Sophie's oatmeal when a small voice said, Daddy, there's a lady asleep in the box room. He turned. Sophie was standing in her pajamas, hair spectacular, rabbit under her arm, staring at him with the expression of someone who has discovered something extraordinary and is trying to be calm about it. I know, Bug. She's our neighbor. She hurt her ankle last night. Sophie processed this. Is she a good guy? Yes. Does she like oatmeal? I don't know. Sophie considered this genuinely complex situation for another 3 seconds, then turned and went back down the hall. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, and started making a third bowl of oatmeal. By the time Mara appeared in the kitchen doorway, ankle wrapped in the ace bandage he'd left outside the guest room door, hair somewhat assembled, wearing the oversized Henley he'd left for her because her scrubs had still been damp. Sophie was already seated at the table, watching the doorway with intense focus. Hi, said Sophie. I made you a place. There was indeed a place set at the table, placemat slightly crooked. Spoon on the wrong side. Mara stood in the doorway in his oversized shirt and looked at the set place and the small, serious girl, and something crossed her face that Ryan couldn't name exactly, except that it looked like the moment before you cry when you're trying very hard not to. Thank you, Mara said and sat down. Sophie watched her take the first bite of oatmeal with the focused attention of a food critic. It's good, Mara told her. Sophie nodded, satisfied. I helped, she said. Daddy makes it, but I put the brown sugar. That's the most important part, Mara said. Sophie beamed. Ryan stood at the stove, watching the two of them, and felt something in his chest move, quietly, without announcement, like furniture rearranging itself in a room while you're looking the other way. She left at 9. She thanked him twice, ruffled Sophie's hair, and limped the 3 doors down to 4C. That should have been the end of it. Except that at 6:30 that evening, there was a knock at the door. Sophie answered it before Ryan could. Mara was standing in the hallway, with a container of homemade soup and an expression that mixed determination with a kind of sheepishness. I make soup when I'm processing things, she said. I made too much. Sophie looked up at her. Can you stay for dinner? Ryan, appearing behind Sophie, made a gesture that was meant to convey, you don't have to, but probably looked more ambiguous than that. Yes, said Mara. This is the moment in the story, right here, where everything hinges, where the small daily decision to open a door or walk past it defines everything that comes after. If you feel that, if you know what it is to stand at a door, you're not sure whether to open, stay with this story. Watch it to the end. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, because every week we bring you stories about the specific, quiet courage of choosing to let someone in. She came back. That was the thing no one could have predicted, least of all Mara herself, who had spent 4 years building a very precise and self-sufficient life specifically designed not to need anyone. She came back because Sophie asked her to read the bedtime story, and she said yes before she'd thought about it. She came back because Ryan made coffee that was actually good and left her alone, when she needed quiet, and talked to her like she was a whole person and not a series of qualities to be assessed. She came back because the apartment 3 doors down was clean and organized and completely silent at the end of a 14-hour shift, and the silence had started to weigh something. She came back on a Thursday with food, on a Saturday with a board game for Sophie. On a Tuesday, for no reason she could have articulated, she just ended up at the door, and Ryan opened it like he'd been expecting her, and Sophie yelled, Mara's here from somewhere in the apartment, with an enthusiasm that did something complicated to Mara's chest. She didn't talk about what she was doing. She didn't name it. Naming it would have made it possible to be afraid of it. Ryan didn't push. He was. She noticed this slowly, and then all at once. Exceptionally good at not pushing. He had a patient stillness about him, the kind that isn't passive but chosen. The kind that says, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. You take whatever time you need. It was, she thought, probably what had made him a good husband. It was certainly what was making him an extraordinary father. She watched him with Sophie and felt it like a frequency. She'd forgotten she could hear. The specific texture of a love that was total and undefended and didn't ask anything back. He braided Sophie's hair badly and didn't apologize for it. He let her put 17 stuffed animals on the bed and negotiated them down to 9 with the gravity of a UN diplomat. He told her the truth about hard things in language scaled to a 6-year-old. And the truth was always, this is sad, and we're going to be okay, and I love you more than the whole sky. One night after Sophie was asleep, Mara sat on his kitchen counter while he washed the dishes. She'd offered. He'd declined. She'd climbed up to supervise, and she said, "You're a really good dad." He kept washing. "I'm a terrified dad who fakes it pretty well." "That's what a really good dad is," she said. He looked at her over his shoulder. Dish soap on his hands, the small kitchen warm with lamplight. Rain starting again outside the window. "You're good with her," he said. "She talks about you at school." Mara felt her breath catch slightly. "What does she say?" "She told her teacher that her neighbor is a nurse and saves kids." A pause. "She said she's kind of like our person." The kitchen went quiet except for the rain. "Kind of like our person." Mara looked at her hands in her lap. She thought about the hallway floor 14 weeks ago. The ice pack. The guest room with the clean sheets. The oatmeal with brown sugar. She thought about 4 years of a life that was exactly right and exactly empty. "Ryan," she said. He turned around, dish towel in his hand, and waited. That stillness. That patient, undemanding stillness. "I'm scared," she said. Just that. Clean and direct, the way she'd learned to be about things that mattered. "Of what specifically?" he asked. Gentle, not moving toward her, not away. Just present. "Of how much I don't want to go back to it being quiet," she said. "Of how fast this happened. Of its being someone's person and then not being anymore. Of what happens if—" She stopped. He set the dish towel down on the counter. "My wife's name was Grace," he said. "She was funny and impatient, and she burned everything she cooked, and she was the best person I knew. And I thought, after her, I thought that was it, that I'd had the thing and it was over, and now I just maintained. Did the job, kept Sophie safe. That was the whole shape of what was left." He paused. "Then you sat down at my kitchen table and helped. My daughter put brown sugar on oatmeal, and I started waking up and thinking about whether you'd be home that evening. And that scared me more than anything has in 3 years. Mara looked at him. "So what did you do with that?" she asked. "Decided it meant I was still alive," he said simply. "Decided it was Grace telling me the shape wasn't as small as I thought." The rain was steady against the window now. Mara slid off the counter. She crossed the small kitchen in 3 steps, and she stood in front of him, close enough that she had to look up slightly. And she said, "I'm not going back to quiet." Ryan looked at her for a moment, really looked. The way people look when they're deciding to trust something. And then, slowly he raised one hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and left his hand at her jaw. And she leaned into it, like Sophie leaned into him, like a plant leaning toward light. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay," she said. 6 months later, Sophie came home from school with a drawing. She put it on the refrigerator herself, in the prime position in the center, held up by 2 strawberry magnets. Ryan looked at it while Mara read. Sophie's nightly story from the guest room that had become Mara's room, that had quietly, without ceremony, become just her room. The drawing showed 3 figures. The tallest had brown hair and was labeled Daddy in large uneven letters. The smallest was labeled M.E. and was holding a rabbit. The middle figure had dark hair and was labeled, in Sophie's most careful handwriting, Mara, our person. Ryan stood at the refrigerator for a long moment, a dish towel in his hand. The apartment warm and full of sound, Sophie's voice and Mara's voice and the small, ordinary music of an evening that had people in it. And he felt the specific, irreplaceable weight of a life that had against all reasonable expectation, found its way back to full. He looked at the drawing. He thought about a hallway floor, a soaking wet woman, a bowl of cereal he'd never finished. He thought about how close he'd come to just grabbing the package and closing the door. He put his hand flat against the drawing, just for a second, against Mara, our person and Daddy and me, and took a breath that went all the way down. Then he went down the hall to finish the story.